September 13, 1982, Princess Grace of Monaco lost control of her car on a winding mountain road and plunged down a 45-foot embankment. The world mourned a fairy tale ending in tragedy, but witnesses say she wasn't alone in the car, and the official story keeps changing. What really happened on that road remains locked behind palace walls. Chapter 1. From Hollywood to royalty. Grace Kelly was the definition of Hollywood royalty before she became actual royalty. Born in 1929 to a wealthy Philadelphia family, she had the grace, the beauty, and the talent that made her unforgettable. By 21, she was on Broadway. By 23, she was a movie star. By 26, she'd won an Oscar. Rear Window, To Catch a Thief, High Society. She worked with Hitchcock, Cary Grant, Frank Sinatra. Directors fell in love with her cool blonde elegance. Audiences fell in love with her understated sensuality. Grace Kelly didn't need to try, she simply was. Then, in 1955, she attended the Cannes Film Festival and met Prince Rainier III of Monaco. A fairy tale romance followed. The actress became a princess in 1956. In a wedding watched by 30 million people, she gave up Hollywood, her contract, her career, her freedom to become Princess Grace of Monaco. But fairy tales have dark corners. Friends said Grace was never truly happy in Monaco. The palace was a gilded cage. The prince was controlling. Monaco's aristocracy never fully accepted the American actress. She missed acting desperately, but was forbidden from returning to film. By 1982, she'd spent 26 years playing the role of a lifetime and she was exhausted. That September morning, she got in her car with her daughter, Stephanie, and drove toward a destiny that some say she saw coming. Chapter 2. The Girl Who Had Everything. Grace Patricia Kelly grew up in Philadelphia's elite circles. Her father was a self-made millionaire and Olympic gold medalist. Her mother was the first woman to coach athletics at the University of Pennsylvania. Success wasn't optional in the Kelly family, it was expected. Grace's father never believed in her acting dreams. He thought Hollywood was beneath their family's dignity. When she won the Academy Award for The Country Girl in 1955, he didn't attend the ceremony. That rejection haunted her. So when Prince Rainier proposed, it felt like validation. If her father wouldn't accept her as an actress, maybe he'd accept her as a princess. The wedding required a $2 million dowry from her family essentially. Grace was purchased. Her father paid it without complaint. Finally, she'd made him proud, but the cost was higher than money. Monaco's palace protocol demanded she give up acting completely. No films, no theater, no creative outlet. She could appear in public, wave to crowds, and produce airs. That was her job. Now, she had 3 children, Caroline, Albert, and Stephanie. She threw herself into motherhood, charity work, and palace duties. But friends who visited said her eyes had lost their light. The woman who'd captivated audiences with her quiet intensity was slowly disappearing behind the crown. Chapter 3. The Marriage Behind Closed Doors. From the outside, Prince Rainier and Princess Grace had a perfect marriage. State dinners, royal appearances, coordinated smiles for the cameras, but those who knew them whispered a different story. Rainier was a traditional man who expected a traditional wife. Grace was an American actress who'd been independent her entire life. The clash was inevitable. He made decisions she was expected to obey. When she disagreed, he reminded her of her duty. Rainier had affairs, multiple affairs, that Monaco's press dutifully ignored. Grace knew, everyone knew, but princesses don't divorce. They endure, so she buried herself in preserving Monaco's gardens and promoting arts programs, while her husband lived by different rules. By the early 1980s, the marriage was functional but cold. They appeared together in public, slept in separate rooms at night. Grace confided to close friends that she felt trapped. "I'm living someone else's life," she told one confidant. "I don't know who Grace Kelly is anymore. I'm just Princess Grace and she's not real." Her children struggled to. Caroline had divorced and remarried, causing palace scandals. Stephanie, at 17, was rebellious and struggling with her identity. Albert felt the weight of being heir to a tiny principality that only mattered because his mother had been a movie star. Chapter 4. The Return. That never happened in 1982. Grace Kelly was 52 years old and considering something unthinkable, returning to acting. Director Robert Dornhelm wanted her for a film called Rearranged. It would be her first movie role in 26 years. Grace was excited in a way friends hadn't seen in years. She started preparing, reading the script, thinking about performance again. For the first time since 1956, she felt like herself. But when the Monaco press learned about it, the backlash was immediate. Palace officials were horrified. How could the Princess of Monaco appear in a film? What about dignity, tradition, the principality's image? Prince Rainier was furious. He'd forbidden her from acting decades ago. That rule hadn't changed. Grace tried to negotiate. Maybe if it was a small role. Maybe if it was filmed in Monaco. Maybe if the proceeds went to charity. But Rainier wouldn't budge. The answer was no. She'd made her choice in 1956. She had to live with it. The rejection devastated her. Friends said she became withdrawn, melancholic. One confidant remembered Grace saying, "I gave up everything for this life. And now I realize I gave up too much." She started having headaches, dizzy spells. Her doctors said it was stress, but maybe it was something worse. Chapter 5. The morning of September 1, 3th Monday, September 13th, 1982, started as an ordinary day at the palace. Grace had spent the weekend at UNTOLD, the family's country home in the hills above Monaco. She was scheduled to return to Monaco with her youngest daughter, 17-year-old Princess Stephanie. The drive was familiar winding mountain road called the D37, with hairpin turns and spectacular views. Grace had driven it hundreds of times. She knew every curve, every dangerous spot. But that morning, something was different. According to the initial reports, Grace was driving, Stephanie was in the passenger seat. They left UNTOLD around 9:30 a.m. The car was a 1971 Rover 3500, reliable but older. Grace was carrying luggage, dresses for upcoming appearances, and a hatbox in the back seat. Witnesses later reported seeing the Rover driving erratically, slowing down, speeding up, drifting across lanes. One truck driver said the car seemed like it was being driven by someone who was ill. Another witness claimed to see two people struggling inside the car, as if fighting over the steering wheel. At approximately 10 a.m., on a particularly treacherous section of the road, the Rover suddenly veered right, crashed through a retaining wall, and plunged down a 45-foot embankment. The car rolled multiple times before coming to rest in a garden below. Local residents heard the crash and called for help. Emergency services arrived within minutes. Both Grace and Stephanie were still alive, but badly injured. They were rushed to Princess Grace Hospital, ironically named after the woman now fighting for her life there. The palace's changing story. Here's where the official story starts to fall apart. In the hours after the crash, Monaco's palace released conflicting statements that have never been reconciled. First statement: Princess Grace was driving, Princess Stephanie was a passenger. The car suffered brake failure on the steep descent. Second statement: hours later, Princess Grace may have suffered a minor stroke before the crash, causing her to lose control of the vehicle. Third statement: the next day after Grace's death, the princess had suffered a stroke. She was unconscious when the car left the road. The crash did not kill her, the stroke did. But Stephanie told friends a completely different story. She claimed she was driving, not her mother. Grace had been feeling ill and asked Stephanie to take the wheel. When the brakes failed, Stephanie couldn't control the car. They crashed. Stephanie survived because she was younger and stronger. The palace immediately denied Stephanie's version. They insisted Grace was driving. Why? Because princesses don't let unlicensed 17-year-olds drive them on dangerous mountain roads. Because admitting Stephanie was driving would mean accepting that the crash might have been prevented. Chapter 7. The medical mystery. Grace Kelly was taken to the hospital with severe head trauma, a broken collarbone, broken ribs, and a fractured leg. Doctors discovered something else during their examination, evidence of a cerebral hemorrhage. Had she suffered a stroke while driving, or did the stroke happen during the crash? The medical reports were contradictory and, strangely, were immediately classified by the palace. Rehook 7 Grace never regained consciousness. On September 14, 1982, one day after the crash, Prince Rainier made the decision to remove her from life support. She was 52 years old. The official cause of death: stroke, followed by injuries sustained in a car accident. But doctors who examined Grace's body later raised questions. The stroke damage suggested it had occurred during the crash, not before. If true, that meant brake failure caused the accident, not a medical emergency. So why did the palace insist on the stroke narrative? Some speculate it was about liability. If the brakes failed, someone was responsible for maintaining the vehicle. If Grace had a stroke, it was an act of God, no one to blame. Others believe the stroke story was meant to protect Stephanie. If people knew she was driving, she'd carry the guilt forever. The car itself was examined by mechanics. They found the brake lines had fluid, but the brakes were worn. Not failed, just old. Could experienced driver Grace Kelly have lost control on a road she'd driven hundreds of times? Or was someone else behind the wheel? Chapter 8. What Stephanie never said. Princess Stephanie was pulled from the wreckage with minor injuries, scratches, bruises, a cracked vertebra. Physically, she recovered within weeks. Emotionally, she never recovered at all. In the months after her mother's death, Stephanie gave exactly one interview. She said the crash was a tragic accident and refused to discuss details. For years, she maintained the official story: Grace was driving, suffered a stroke, lost control, rehook 8. But friends said Stephanie was haunted. She had nightmares about the crash. She'd wake up screaming, reliving those moments when the car left the road. She dropped out of school, pursued a rebellious lifestyle, modeling, singing, dating inappropriate men. Psychologists who observed her from afar said it was classic survivor's guilt. In 2002, 20 years after the crash, Stephanie finally spoke more openly. She told a French magazine, "I don't want to talk about the accident. I was there. I know what happened, and I'll never tell anyone the full truth because it doesn't matter anymore. My mother is gone. Nothing I say will bring her back." What truth was she protecting? Some believe Stephanie was driving and can't forgive herself. Others think Grace confessed something in those final moments, a secret Stephanie swore to keep. A few conspiracy theorists suggest there was a third person in the car, someone who escaped before emergency services arrived. Chapter 9. The theories that won't die. Theory 1. It was a simple accident. Grace suffered a stroke, lost control, crashed. Tragic but not mysterious. The conflicting stories were just palace bureaucracy and poor communication during a crisis. Theory 2. Stephanie was driving without a license. Grace was teaching her on that mountain road. The brakes failed or Stephanie panicked. Grace tried to grab the wheel. Witnesses saw them struggling. They crashed. Stephanie survived but was blamed by the palace. So Rainier created the stroke story to protect his daughter. Rehook 9. Theory 3 is darker. Grace Kelly was murdered, by whom some point to Rainier himself. He was furious about her acting comeback plans. Divorce would have been a scandal, but a tragic accident. That would make him a sympathetic widower and silence Grace permanently. Did someone tamper with the brakes? Theory 4 involves Monaco's organized crime connections. The principality was an Isar tax haven with shadowy finances. Some researchers claim Grace had discovered corruption in Monaco's banking system. She'd threatened to expose it. The crash was a warning that became a killing. Theory 5. Grace wanted to die. She'd been depressed for years, trapped in a loveless marriage, forbidden from the work she loved. Maybe she didn't fight the stroke. Maybe she let go of the wheel. Maybe the crash wasn't an accident, it was an escape. Chapter 10. The funeral of a princess. Grace Kelly's funeral was held on September 18, 1982, in Monaco's cathedral. 400 guests attended. Hollywood royalty and actual royalty sat side by side. Cary Grant wept openly. Princess Diana attended, pale and shaken. She'd see her own tragic car crash 15 years later. Prince Rainier walked behind the coffin, holding Stephanie's hand. She was barely able to stand, still recovering from her injuries. Caroline and Albert flanked their father, trying to hold the family together. Rehook 10. The Principality of Monaco went into official mourning. Grace had transformed their tiny country into a glamorous destination. Without her star power, Monaco was just another Mediterranean tax haven. They'd lost their greatest asset. In death, Grace Kelly became what she'd been in life: a symbol of elegance, of sacrifice, of the price women pay when they give up everything for love. Her funeral was watched by over 100 million people worldwide, more than had watched her wedding 26 years earlier. But as the cameras broadcasted images of the grieving family, one person was conspicuously absent from close-ups: Princess Stephanie. Palace handlers kept her in the background, hidden. Some said it was to protect her during her grief. Others whispered it was because the palace blamed her and didn't want the world to see the girl who'd been in the car when Princess Grace died. Final cliffhanger: the official investigation into Grace Kelly's death was completed in less than a week. The conclusion: Accidental death following a stroke. Case closed. No charges filed. No mechanical failure found. No further questions. But 3 pieces of evidence were never explained. First, multiple witnesses reported seeing the rover parked on the side of the road about 10 minutes before the crash. 2 figures were visible inside, appearing to argue or switch seats. When investigators asked the palace about this, they were told the witnesses were mistaken. The sightings were removed from the official report. Second, Grace's personal diary was found in the wreckage. Pages covering the week before her death were missing, torn out cleanly, as if removed deliberately. The palace claimed the pages were destroyed in the crash, but the diary itself was intact, and only those specific pages were gone. Third, in the months before her death, Grace had contacted her American lawyers about updating her will. She'd mentioned wanting to establish a foundation in the United States separate from Monaco's control. She'd also asked about the possibility of an American citizen divorcing a foreign head of state. Her lawyers prepared documents. Grace never signed them. On the morning of September 13th, those documents were in Grace's briefcase in the car. After the crash, the briefcase was recovered. The legal papers about divorce and the foundation were missing. The palace said they'd been lost in the accident. Grace's American lawyers said that was impossible. The documents were in a sealed waterproof folder, specifically to prevent damage. What happened to those papers? What did Grace write in her diary during that final week? And why was the investigation closed so quickly, with so many witnesses' testimonies dismissed or ignored? Princess Stephanie knows the truth. She was there. She saw everything. But she's never told the complete story, not to the public, not to investigators, possibly not even to her own family. In 2007, she visited the crash site for the first time since the accident. A photographer captured her, standing at the edge of the embankment, looking down at the spot where the car had landed. Her expression was unreadable grief, guilt, or perhaps relief that after 25 years, she'd finally faced the place where her mother died, or the place where her mother was killed. Grace Kelly lived 45 years as herself and 26 years as Princess Grace. In the end, the princess won, but what Grace Kelly wanted to say, what she couldn't tell anyone that day died with her on that mountain road in Monaco. The fairy tale had a tragic ending, but was it an accident, or was it written that way on purpose?